Last time I ate three meals a day. The last time?
Well, it's been a while since I ate 3 meals a day. Probably about 6 months ago.
Scary, yeah. It is really scary.
To me, global hunger and poverty is the biggest problem in the world today. More people die every day of global poverty than any other crisis, than violence, than crime, than anything else. 30,000 people die every day, the equivalent of 8 or 10 9/11s every day. So most of that death is silent because we don't hear about it. It's a common everyday problem and not one that makes the headlines in the news.
Two of my bosses out feeding children everywhere, Kara and Christina, took a mission trip to Haiti about a year ago, and they came across these two little Haitian twins, Anderson and Andrew Lee. They were eating dirt, they were stick skinny, they were experiencing severe malnutrition.
I think one of the things that really hit me hard was that there's so many kids that are just kind of living in poverty, and they don't really, I mean, they have families, but their families don't support them economically or financially, and so they really have to work for themselves. And a lot of the kids would miss school because they were doing different projects, like taking bananas to the market, and to them that was more important than getting the education that they needed. There's one little girl there who really touched our hearts when we were there. Her name is Scola, and when we met her, she was 3 years old. And she immediately came up to us, and she was so excited to see foreigners there. And of course all the little kids asked for money or toys, but she was different in that she really wanted to learn. And so she would come with her little notebook every single day and want to learn math or reading or something like that.
While we were walking, we saw these little tin huts literally around the trash dump, and little kids digging through the trash, trying to find something to eat, trying to find food. And I thought that was horrible enough. And then as you're walking, there's these gigantic vultures sitting on the top of these trash heaps that are right next to these little kids. And it just broke my heart. As we were walking as well, we started seeing more of the houses, and we asked our guide, that was Nicaraguan, why there's houses around there and what they were for. And he said that's actually where they live. So they live right there at the trash dump.
There's enough food to feed 10, 12 billion people right now, and so a lot of people think, oh, it's a population problem, right? But it's not a population problem, because there really is enough food to feed everybody. Even with all the meat that we eat, there's still enough food to eat to feed everybody. And all the meat that we eat and all the crap that we eat, we don't have to eat that, right? We're actually going to be healthier if we don't eat so much crap, not so much content. So yeah, if we had better lifestyles, dietary lifestyles, then there'd be even more food to feed everybody. And even more than that, there's even enough food in those regions to feed everybody, right? It's not just like all the food's here in the U.S. and we can feed everybody in Africa or India, right? It's not even that. There actually is enough food in India and sub-Saharan Africa and other places to feed those people. It's just that it's not a problem of supply, it's a problem of access.
Even though these countries have enough food, there are millions of hungry people around the world. There are 578 million hungry people in Asia and the Pacific, 239 million in sub-Saharan Africa, 53 million in Latin America and the Caribbean, and 37 million in East and North Africa.
If they don't eat, it's death. There's no government help, there's nobody helping them. It's a really extreme situation. And there are a billion people on this planet living in that kind of situation. And then seeing that and walking by that and smelling the smells and seeing the sights really hit home for me.
I've been to cultures and communities communities around the world that, there are people that are in danger of actually starving. There are kids that are skin and bones and have the big bellies from being malnourished. I mean, it's tragic, and that's what impressed my heart to say I have to do something. I cannot just be a normal American. I just can't do it. I'm going to commit my life to making a difference in these kids' lives. So I've seen that, but I've also seen hungry kids here in the States that, they get a free meal at lunch because they're on the free reduced lunch program, but then they go home and for dinner they either don't get anything, or it's food that is not nutritious and not healthy. It's something from 7-Eleven or, those kids deserve healthy food the same that the kids in Africa or in Haiti deserve the healthy food. It's life and death to provide food aid.
I went to Tanzania in the summer of 2010, I believe, and I stayed in a little village called Mkash, and that's sort of where I started to build this project.
Feeding Children Everywhere is a social charity that mobilizes and empowers people to package healthy meals for hungry children all around the world.
Stop Hunger Now is an international relief organization. By creating this movement of volunteers throughout the country engaged in packaging these meals, they're being educated, they're getting a hands-on experience, but it's also used to leverage education internationally, getting children into school.
Tuko Pamoja Mkash is what it's called, and it stands for We Are Together with the Village of Mkash. And basically, the premise of the project is that it's a community development project. So we're working with different groups of people in the village to kind of help them become more self-sustaining. For the past, hundreds of years, they've been really dependent on aid and different people giving them things. And so our vision was to kind of help them become more sustainable and work for themselves and work upon their entrepreneurial spirit to really develop things in the village that would help them come out of poverty and really make a difference for themselves.
So we do these meal packaging events where hundreds or even thousands of volunteers come together on an assembly line process, and they package anywhere from 20,000 meals to 1 million meals in one day.
The first thing that goes into the meal is Himalayan sea salt. It's a pink salt and it's super rare and it has 84 vitamins and minerals in it. And then goes the dried vegetables. There's 7 different kinds of dried vegetables. There's carrots, onions, just to name a few. And then there's white rice, and then there's lentils, which is like the main part of the meal. It's super healthy, full of protein, and it makes it a superfood.
All the Stop Hunger Now meals consist of 4 main ingredients. They consist of rice, vegetables, vitamin packet. It's a packet of 21 vitamins and nutrients, as well as a delicious chicken flavoring with no meat products though. All of our meals are fully vegetarian. And the way we keep it vegetarian and still add protein is through soy. So we also have soy in the meals. So the 4 ingredients are rice, soy, dehydrated vegetables, which consist of carrots, onions, peppers, celery, tomatoes, and the vitamin packet. And we believe that the vitamin packet is the heart of the meal. That is what really is going to help these children fight off malnutrition.
The nutritional needs, especially of a child, are huge. A child's body is growing and developing so quickly, very rapidly, and protein is vitally important. One for muscles, muscles have to have protein to grow, and then also the brain. The brain has to have protein to grow and develop and function. And when a child is hungry or malnourished and doesn't have the protein that it needs, then it's really hard for them to be educated.
The first 1,000 days of a child's life are critical in getting proper food for them to grow physically and to develop mentally. But around the world, children suffer from malnutrition with lifelong consequences. Farm Bill requires the bulk of it to be commodities that are US grown, packaged and shipped. Products like CSB, a corn-soy blend, which lacks the vital nutrients that babies really need. Each year between May and the October harvest, food runs out and families go hungry. Decades into a global effort to stop malnutrition, scenes like this remain sadly familiar. But the real tragedy is not just lack of aid, but lack of the right kind, especially for children under 2.
I think this misperception about aid and poverty has a lot to do with how global poverty, how sub-Saharan Africa particularly is is portrayed in the media, right? This idea that it's always problems, it's always conflict, there's no progress. A lot of people get pessimistic because they feel like, oh, global poverty, it's too big, and it's not changing over time. I think aid is vital. I've seen hospital clinics and people who are kept alive only with international aid from the U.S.
What I would like to tell anybody who's interested in Stop Hunger Now is not only are you going to make a tangible impact on fighting hunger and global poverty, but also you're going to know exactly where the meals go. We follow up with all of our volunteers and let them know exactly where the meals go when they are shipped out of our warehouse. So not only are you packaging the meals, but then you're going to see pictures and images and stories of kids that are receiving your meals.
They continue to get updates on Anderson and Anderlee, and they gained a healthy amount of weight. They're in school, and they have come such a long way from eating dirt abandoned in the streets.
When people hear those stories, they hear about a little 7-year-old girl in Guatemala that hadn't eaten for 3 days, and she had a parasite inside of her stomach that was so large you could see it through the skin. When they hear about that, they're kind of horrified, like, oh my gosh, and when I share with them that we got the girl medicine and that she got food and made sure that she was taken care of, they're like, oh, that's so amazing, But to then take that story and communicate with them that there are millions of that story around the world, and if there was, a whole group of them, if there were 20 of those kids in this room right now with us, every person around us would do whatever they could, reach into their wallets, their pockets, didn't matter what they had go on or even what kind of bills they had, they're going to feed those kids right there.
So Sam and I decided that we wanted to make a long-term commitment to her by funding her schooling. And so we sent her to school at a private school where it was totally English immersion. And so Sam went back this past 2 months ago, and they called me on the phone, and now she's fluent in English and she can speak to us, and it's just so fun to see that from like where she was a couple years ago to where she is now, and she's made so much growth, and I can tell that she's going to really make a difference in the village.
The good news, I think, is that global poverty and hunger is decreasing significantly. Most people don't understand that, in fact, there's been huge strides toward reducing the percent of the population who actually is hungry. We're talking about 50 years ago, 40 or 50% of the whole population was extremely poor, that just did not have their basic needs met. Today, we're talking about 15%, 10-15% of the global population. So that's like significant. We're talking about 500 million or 1 billion people that are getting their basic needs met today that didn't have that 50 years ago. So there's been big progress on that.
I think the answer for how people can take action is decide to do something and making sure that people are doing the right thing that makes sense, that has the maximum impact. And obviously my answer is to get involved with feeding children everywhere, because we can package a healthy meal and ship it around the world to a hungry child for a quarter. For 25 cents, we can provide a healthy meal for a hungry child.
It doesn't take much to make a difference, and you need to find something that you're passionate about. I think everyone has something to offer, and I think if you really look at what you're benefiting from, you can really help another person who's struggling. I think we're all meant to help each other out, and it's just about finding your place and finding what you're great at and what other people are struggling with, so that you can really complement each other.
If you're a college student who's remotely interested about global hunger and effectiveness of aid, is get out in the field and go experience some aspect of it yourself.